Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Test, Daf 9 of Masechta Hagiga. Friends, Daf 9 is a geschmack daf, I'll tell you. It's got a little bit of everything on this daf. It's got some real Gemara, some real, you got a Halt Kopper shtickle, but also some beautiful agadatas. If anybody in Babylon Talmud is familiar with Tanya from Chabad Hasidus, there's a very famous Tanya Gemara in this daf. So we're going to talk about tashlumin for the Olas Riyah and the Shamli Hagiga if you didn't do it on the first day, in terms of making it up on other days, and then we'll get to some interesting agadatas. Friends, we have outside in the park, Dennis, when you come to see the Yanina Shul, you're going to come outside the Yanina Shul. There's a park, and there's a fellow who's making a lot of noise over there. He's been there all afternoon. But, alright, what do you want me to tell you? It's now the nighttime, and he's still there. He's still making a lot of noise, I guess. Alright, oh, there he is. I don't know. Why are you thinking? Alright, let's go weiter. Alright, so we're on Daf Tes. 4 lines into the page at the Mishnah, Mishalo Chog B'Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chog. So you have a fellow, he didn't offer the Korban Chagiga, the Shalmi Chagiga, on the first day of Sukkot. Chogeg es kol haregel B'Yom Tov Ha'achron Sheregel. So Shel Chag. So if he didn't offer the Shalmi Chagiga on the first day of Sukkot, so he could offer it the second day, the third day, the fourth day. He could offer it the entire rest of Sukkot, including Shmini Atzeres. Over a regel. Once Sukkot is over, V'lo Chag, and he didn't offer a Korban Chagiga, Eino Chai B'Achrayuso. So that's it. Too late. Right? So you could, really you're supposed to offer the Korban Chagiga on the first day of Sukkot. You didn't offer it the first day, so you can offer it any of the remaining days, including Shmini Atzeres. After Shmini Atzeres, you missed your chance, Al Zanemar. And about this predicament it says, Muvos liyuchal liskon, something that is crooked cannot be fixed, v'chesron, something that is lacking, liyuchal liyimonus, is unable to be counted, i.e., you missed your chance. Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, Omer says, Rav Shimon ben Manasseh, Eizu muvos shenu liyuchal liskon, he's talking. What is an example of something that is bent and cannot be fixed? Za'abala erva volid mimena mamzer. This is somebody who sleeps with a man who sleeps with a woman who he's not allowed to sleep with, and from that comes a baby who's a mamzer, and you mamish brought a human into the world who is a mamzer, and there's nothing you can do to fix that. Because if after all you're talking about, well, you stole, right, Reuven stole Epis from Shimon. So Reuven just needs to give it back to Shimon and problem solved, fixed. But, Reuven sleeps with Rachel and he's not allowed to, and they give birth to Shimon, so then that can't be fixed. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, in Korin me'uvas ella, we can technically only call something crooked if it was initially fixed, if it was initially straight. And then it became crooked. That's a reference to a Torah scholar who then left the ways of the Torah, went off the derech. So if you have a Torah scholar, so he was initially mesukon, he was initially straight and fixed, but then he went off the OTD, went off the derech. So then that would be an example of mu'uvos liyucholiskon, something that is crooked, is unable to be fixed. That he was initially straight, then became crooked and unable to be fixed. Alright. Fine. Minani mili. So it says the Gemara, how do we know that, ideally you're supposed to offer the Chagiga on the first day of Sukkot. If not, then you can do it the rest of the festival, including Shmini Atzeres. If you missed that, then you missed your chance. So Amr Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shmuel. So Rabbi Yochanan says name Rabbi Shmuel. Nemar Atzeres Bashvi Shel Pesach, and Nemar Atzeres Bashvi Bashmini Shel Chag. Well, it says Atzeres on the last day of Pesach, and it also says Atzeres referring to Shmini Atzeres, referring to the last day of sort of the Sukkot festival. Ma lohalim tashlumin afkan tashlumin. So just like the last day of the atzeres of Pesach, i.e. day 7 of Pesach, so you can offer the Shalmi Chagiga if you have not yet offered it. So also the atzeres of Sukkot, which is the festival, the holiday of Shmini Atzeres, also if you didn't yet offer the Korban Chagiga, the Shalmi Chagiga, you can offer it on Shmini Atzeres as well. Mufne, and the Gemara says that this Gezer Shava of Atzeres, right, this is Atzeres by Pesach and Atzeres by Sukkot, so it is a Gezer Shava Mufne. Who could tell me, whoa, that fellow is yelling. Who could tell me what a Gezer Shava Mufne is? A Gezer Shava Mufne is a Gezer Shava that is basically available for us to learn, right? Of course, a Gezer Shava is, you have to have a tradition going all the way back to Mount Sinai. And it has to be that this is, not a Gezer Shava. I mean, it has to be that this Gezer Shava is available for a Gezer Shava. It is not needed for anything else. The Lav Mufne, because if not for the fact that this is a proper Gezer Shava of Atzeres, that these two words are available for this Gezer Shava, i.e., if we were just kind of essentially learning it on our own and saying, well, it says Atzeres here, it says Atzeres there, so let's say that it's the same thing. Well, i.e., if it wasn't Alach L'Moshe Misina, you're just trying to make your own Gezer Shava, well then there are easy questions to ask, such as, I can ask, Malashvi Shal Pesach, you can't just compare, you cannot simply compare Pesach and Sukkot, because when it comes to the Atzeres of Pesach, when it comes to the 7th day of Pesach, Shekinenu Cholok Mishel Lefonov, there's no distinction between the 7th day of Pesach and any of the other days of Pesach. They're all part of Pesach. However, Tomim B'Shmini Shachag Shecholok Mishel Lefonov, right? You can't necessarily compare that to the 8th day of Sukkot, which is different, right? Shmini Atzeres is a completely separate festival, right? As we've seen a few times with regard to Pezer Keshev, right? I don't remember what all of them are, but what's Pei? Can't remember. Zion, what's that? Is that like Zman, that you say like its own Shechianu? And Reish is Regel, like it's its own festival, I think. Kuf is like Korbanos, Shin is Shir, right? It has its own Shir Shal Yom. And Beis is Bracha, I think you say it's like got its own, like Shmini Chag Atzeres is it, and the Brachas, so Kilu, it's its own festival, right? So therefore, if not for the fact that it's a Gezer Shava, that we have a tradition going all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, and that Atzeres by Pesach and Atzeres by Sukkot is available for us to be able to use this Gezer Shava that goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu, if not for that, we could say you can't just compare the last day of Pesach and the last day of Sukkot. They're different things, right? Meaning they're very different from each other, because while the last day of Pesach is just like the second to last day of Pesach, it's just like every other day of Pesach, but the last day of Sukkot, i.e. Shmini Atzeres, is actually mamish its own holiday. And I would think that even though on the last day of Pesach you can still offer your Korban Chagiga for Pesach, I might not think that would be the case for I might not think that would be the case for the tashlumin for bringing the Korban Chagiga of Sukkot. I would think that you might not be able to offer it on Shmini Atzeres. Says the Gemara, La'aya Fnuye Mufne, and we say yes, and certainly it must be that Atzeres is available for us to learn for this Gezer Shava Michdei My Atzeres Otzer B'Siachs Melacha, because if you think about it, what does Atzeres mean? It means that Atzor, stop, don't do it, right? Refrain from doing Melacha. But Haksiv Lo Saisa Melacha, that's that same pasuk that says Atzeres. What does it say? Sheshizom Tocham Matzos v'Mashri Atzeres L'Shem L'Kecha Lo Saisa Melacha. It's Atzeres, don't do Melacha. So the pasuk already says don't do Melacha. So what do we learn from Atzeres? So Atzeres the cause of Achmon Alamali. So how come it says Atzeres? Elish Mamina Le'afnuye. Rather, it must be what's the extra Atzeres? It's available for us to use for this Gezer Shava to say that you could offer a Korban Chagiga on Shmini Atzeres if you have not yet offered it. V'tana Ma'asila Mehacha, and we have a Tana that learns it from here, meaning this Gezer Shava was brought by Rabbi Yochanan. We also have another Brisa which says, right, Rabbi Yochanan was an Amora, right? We have a Brisa, we have a Tana who brings it from the following Brisa. The Tanya is learned in the Brisa v'chagosam also Chag LaHashem Shivas Yomim, and you will separate it, right? Celebrate it as a Chagiga for 7 days. Is it possible that I could think that you bring a korban chagiga all 7 days? But I might think that maybe you offer the korban chagiga every single day of Sukkot. Tamalomar also. Therefore it says it, i.e., you only offer it on one day, on the first day, right? And if you don't offer on the first day, then you could make it up on one of the other days. Also atachogeg v'atachogeg kol shiva. Right? You have the chagiga one day. You don't offer the chagiga every day. But then why does it say 7 days? So the tashlumin for making it up, i.e., you should really be offering the korban chagiga on the first day of Sukkot. But if you didn't, or in this case, the pasuk is talking about Pesach, right? But the point is for the festival, right? So you should really offer it on the first day. If you didn't offer it on the first day, so you can make it up on any of the right. So if you didn't offer it on the first day, so you can make it up on any of the remaining days. And how do you know that if you didn't offer the korban chagiga on the first day of Sukkot, so you can make it up any of the other 7 days plus Shmini Atzeres as well? Therefore the pasuk says, "B'chodesh Hashvi tachogu also," that on the 7th month you celebrate. You celebrate. You offer the korban chagiga. Does that mean that you can offer the korban chagiga the entire month? So Tamalomar also it. Also atachogeg v'atachogeg chutza lo. That during the festival itself, that on Sukkot and Shmini Atzeres as well, so you can offer right, meaning in the festival that falls out in that month, in the month of Tishrei, i.e. Sukkot plus Shmini Atzeres, you can offer the korban chagiga. But outside of that, you would be unable to offer the korban chagiga. So what do we see? So we see that ideally you should offer the korban chagiga on the first day of the festival. If you didn't offer it on the first day of the festival, you could make it up on any of the remaining days of the festival. And when it's Sukkot, you can even make it up on Shmini Atzeres as well. All right, this fellow's still outside yelling. He's got some stamina over there. All right, let's go weiter. Mamish, I mean, what's he? I wonder. It's a very different. It's a very different way of doing things, I guess. Yeah, it's difficult for me to relate, but we should go weiter. Let's just go weiter, and that's that. Umay tashlumin. So, what exactly are tashlumin? What's the mechanism? How does it work? And we saw this already on Daf Beis. Let's see. Yochanan Amar tashlumin larishon v'Boshai Amar tashlumin zelazer. Remember that? The Rabbi Yochanan says that what tashlumin is that it's really making up for the first day. That really the mitzvah is that on the first day of the festival, you offer the korban chagiga. If you didn't offer the korban chagiga on the first day, so then memele, you could make it up. And Reb Oshaya says that it's not just making up from the first day, but every day has its own sort of obligation for the korban chagiga, to the extent that if you were unable to offer it on the first day, so offer it on the second day. If you're unable to offer it on the second day, offer it on the third day. And if you didn't offer it on the Thursday, so then offer it on the fourth day to make up for the fact that you should have offered it on the third day, but you didn't. Each day has its own obligation, and each day that you have an obligation and you didn't fulfill your obligation for whatever reason, so the next day you can make up for the fact that the previous day you didn't fulfill your obligation. So again, the two differences are that Rabbi Yochanan says that really the mitzvah is the first day. If you missed the first day, so you can make it up on one of the other days. Whereas according to Rabbi Oshaya, says no, the mitzvah isn't necessarily the first day specifically. The mitzvah is the first day that you're able to offer it. And then if you didn't offer it on that day, so you could make it up on any of the other days. My benai, what would be the nafkamina? Amar Reb Zera, says Reb Zera, chiger b'yom rishon v'nespashet b'yom sheni ike benayu. The nafkamina would be, as we learned on the first daf of Masechet Hagiga, that if you have a fellow who on the first day was unable to walk, but then on the second day he became able to walk, so Rabbi Yochanan Amar tashlumin larishon, Rabbi Yochanan says, well look, the whole concept of making up the korban chagiga is that you're making it up for the fact that you didn't do it on the first day. Now, Kevin Delo chazi b'rishon lo chazi b'sheni, and this fellow, since on the first day he was potter, He wasn't obligated since he was unable to walk, so then he doesn't have to make it up on any of the other days. Right? You only offer it on one of the other days if you're making up for the first day. I.e., you had an obligation to do it on the first day, but you didn't, so you can make it up the other days. But this fellow didn't have an obligation on the first day because he was unable to walk on the first day. And when he's now able to walk the next day, it really doesn't matter because it's all about the first day, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Whereas Rabbi Shai Omar, where it says Rabbi Shai tashlumin zelozeh, that each day is making up for the previous day. I.e., if he couldn't offer it on the first day because he couldn't walk, but on the second day he's able to walk, okay, so on the second day, that's when he becomes obligated to bring the korban Hagiga. And if he didn't offer it, so then he offers it on the second day. If he didn't offer it on the second day, so then he can make up for it on the third day, etc. Right? It's not, stuck and tacked to the first day specifically. Even though he may not have been fit to offer it on the first day because he couldn't walk, but on the second day he was able to walk, so then he would offer it on the second day. And if he didn't offer it on the second day, so he can make up for that on the third day. Okay, friends, you ready? Now we get into shtikul Gemara. We got to use our head a little bit. I feel like we haven't used our head in this capacity in a little while. It's not too difficult, but again, take out that old brain and drink a little coffee and let's do it. In fact, the Gemara, does Rabbi Yochanan really say this? Does Rabbi Yochanan really say that if you were unable to offer a korban at a particular time, so then you're unable to make it up, right? That if on the first day of the festival you were unable to walk, so that means that so you cannot make that up. You can't do tashlumin. But one second, Chizkiah says nitma bayom mevi balayla eino mevi. Rabbi Yochanan Omer af balayla nami mevi. Wow. Woo. Friends, what's this talking about? Who could tell me? It's talking about a Nazir. Who could tell me what a Nazir is? Nazir is like me. Although I gotta be careful. If I say it, then I might actually become a Nazir. My father wouldn't be happy. Although, maybe he wouldn't mind. Anyways, I'll go upon him. So what's a Nazir? A Nazir is a fellow who he doesn't cut his hair, but in addition to not cutting his hair, he doesn't drink wine, doesn't become tamei meis. So let's say you have a fellow, he said he's, so we say whatever, Stam Naziris is Shloshim Yom. Okay, fine. So he's going to be a Nazir for a month. Fine. And then he becomes tamei. He becomes contaminated by corpse tumah. Okay. So halacha is, he's then got to wait 7 days. And then on day 7, he cuts his hair, he goes to the mikveh. And then that night, he becomes tahor, right? With Hayrav Shemesh, when the sun sets, he becomes tahor. And then the following day, he offers a korban. He offers a korban asham. Now, the night between the 7th day and the 8th day is kind of an in-between state, because on the one hand, he's tahor. He already went to the mikveh on day 7. The sun set. He's now tahor. But at the same time, he doesn't yet offer his korbanos until the next day. Okay, fine. So now, says Chizkiah, nitma bayom, so if on day 8, prior to having offered the korban asham, he becomes tamei, so he already had it's day 8, he already had an obligation to offer the korban asham, so he has to bring a korban asham for the fact that he became tamei, but then he became tamei a second time. So now, the next week, he's got to bring 2 korbanos. One that he was obligated to bring a week earlier, but he didn't have a chance before he got tamei a second time. And then he has to also bring a korban asham for the second time that he became tamei. Right? So nitma bayom maybe. If he becomes tamei on the 8th day, so he has to bring 2 korban ashams. Balayla eno maybe. However, if he became tamei the night between day 7 and day 8, so then he does not need to bring 2 korbanos. He only brings 1 korban at the end, because since at the time that he became tamei, in that night between day 7 and day 8, he was not yet obligated to offer the korban, because he's only going to offer the korban the next morning, and he became tamei during the night before, right? The night between day 7 and day 8. So therefore, at the time that he became tamei, he didn't yet have the obligation to offer his offering, so then we don't treat it as if he needed to bring a korban for the first tumah, because he became tamei already a second time before he had an obligation to offer the korban for the first one. So therefore, he just offers one korban at the end for both weeks. Okay, fine. Now, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, whereas Rabbi Yochanan disagrees and he says, Af balayla nami mevi. Ho 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 ho. That says Rabbi Yochanan that even if he becomes tamei in the night between day 7 and day 8, i.e., at a time when he was unfit to bring the korban, because he's only fit to bring the korban the next day, right? You bring the korban on day 8, not the night before. So therefore, he became tamei at a time when he was unfit to offer the korban, and yet Rabbi Yochanan is saying, nonetheless, a week later when he becomes tahor, pure from the second tumah, he's going to bring a korban for the second tumah, but also tashlumin, making up for the first tumah, that, even though he was unfit to offer the korban at the time that he became tamei a second time, he still has to do tashlumin for it. He still has to make up for that. He still has to offer the korban for the first tumah after he becomes tahor for the second time. Now, so how does that apply to our case of the fellow who was unable to walk on the first day? Well, based on that logic, I would say that even though a fellow was unable to walk on the first day, i.e. he was unfit to offer the korban on the first day, but then when he becomes fit to bring the korban, i.e. on the second day, he should have tashlumin from the first day. So we see that by Nazir, Rabbi Yochanan is saying that when he becomes tamei the night between day 7 and day 8, when he's unfit to offer the korban because it's not yet the next day, still he has to make up for it at the end of the tumah. So I should think as well that when it comes to a fellow who was unable to bring a korban on day 1 because he was unable to walk, so then when he's able to then bring a korban, i.e. the next day he's able to walk, so he should have to make up for it. So answer the Gemara. So it says Rabbi Yirmiyah, look, apples and oranges, you can't compare tumah to offering this korban, offering the shamli chagiga when you were unable to walk on the first day of Pesach, because those are two, of the festival, because those are two different things. When it comes to korbanis, when it comes to tumah, so tumah is something that, well, if you look at Pesach Sheni, we have a precedent, we have a concept for the fact that when somebody is unable to offer a korban because he's tamei, so there's tashlumin you can make up for it. Where do we have that? Pesach Sheni, that we learned about in Masechet Pesachim, of course, right? If when it comes time to offer the korban Pesach, a fellow is tamei, so he's unable to offer the korban Pesach, but he can make up for it a month later. He can make up for it at Pesach Sheni. So therefore, we have a precedent that when it comes to tumah, like the Nazir, that he became tamei the night between day 7 and day 8, and therefore he was unable to bring his korban, so he's going to make up for it afterwards. As opposed to somebody who was unable to bring his korban on the first day of the festival because he was unable to walk. In that case, there would not be tashlumin. But when it comes to the Nazir between day 7 and day 8, the night between, or when it comes to Pesach Sheni, he was unable to offer his korban Pesach at the right time because he was tamei. But in those cases, that when he's unable to bring his korban because it's tumah related, so in that case, there will be tashlumin. He will be able to make that up, or he will make that up at a later point, whether Pesach Sheni or whether when he becomes tahor from the second tumah, if he's a Nazir. So in those cases, he'll be able to bring tashlumin. He'll be able to make that korban up, but not when it comes to a fellow who was unable to walk on the first day of the festival and then was able to walk the next day. How's everybody doing? Everybody's doing good, right? In fact, the Gemara, Maskefler, Papa Asakasha though. He says, Anichalam and Omar, Pesach, Sheni Tashlumin Derishanu. That's all fine and good if you understand Pesach Sheni that way. If you understand Pesach Sheni as being Tashlumin for Pesach Rishon, that if you were unable to offer the korban Pesach at its proper time because you were tamei, so you could make up for it a month later, so then, okay, I get it. When it comes to tumah, we have a precedent by Pesach Sheni that if you're tamei and therefore unable to bring a korban, you can make up for it. There's tashlumin, and you could say that that's the same thing when it comes to a Nazir between day 7 and day 8. He became tamei, and therefore he was unable to offer his korban. So then, so then you can make up for it later. fine, but but if the way that you understand Pesach Sheni is that Pesach Sheni is its own Yom Tov, it's its own festival. You are unable to offer the korban Pesach at Pesach because you were tummy. So don't worry. There's going to be another festival a month later, and you can chaperine then. There's going to be Pesach Sheni a month from now, and then you can offer your korban Pesach then on Pesach Sheni. So if you understand that, not that Pesach Sheni is a tashlumin, is making up for the fact that you're unable to do it the first time, but rather that Pesach Sheni is a separate festival that's going to be a month later, and if you didn't have a chance to offer your korban Pesach the first time, so you can offer it on this time as well. So then, we don't have a concept of tashlumin, of making it up when it comes to Tumah, because this isn't a makeup, it's a separate festival. Well, if that's the case, then how do you understand the discrepancy in Rabbi Yochanan's opinion? That when it comes to the person who's unable to walk, he says that you would not make that up on the rest of the festival, and yet when it comes to a Nazir who becomes Tameh between day 7 and day 8, you would make it up, you would offer that korban later. So Elo Amar Rav Papa, so rather says Rav Papa, Kasavar Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is Laila Eino Mechusar Zman. Friends, do you hear that? So first I'll translate it literally, which is double negative, and then I will flip it around to the positive, because of course we prefer positives rather than double negatives, even though of course double negative is positive. So we could stick to the double negative, but of course that's confusing. So we're going to explain it as a positive. However, nonetheless, the literal translation, the double negative is Laila Eino Mechusar Zman, that nighttime is not lacking time. Now flip it around to the positive, that the nighttime is already the time to offer the korban. Right? Meaning, you have this Nazir, day 7, right, he became Tameh, day 7, right, meaning he becomes Tameh, he's not allowed to become Tameh, so now he's got to, become Tahor again. On day 7, after becoming Tameh, he gets a haircut, he goes to the mikvah, and then the next day, he offers his korbanos. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, already that night, the night between day 7 and day 8, there's already an obligation to offer the korban. Now, he can't, technically speaking, execute and act on that obligation till the next day, but the obligation already kicks in from the nighttime. And therefore, when it comes to this Nazir, already that night, already at the time that he became Tameh for a second time, there was already an obligation to offer that korban. Now, he couldn't actually offer it till the next day, but the obligation was already there. And therefore, at the time that he became Tameh the second time, there was already an obligation to bring that first korban, even though he couldn't, technically speaking, offer it until he becomes Tahor again. But that is why, when he becomes Tahor again, he's going to offer 2 korbanos, once for the second tumah, but also once for the first tumah, that he had an obligation to bring, but he was unable to actually bring it because he became Tameh once again. And that's why, when it comes to the Nazir, Rabbi Yochanan says that even if he becomes Tameh that night, he would still offer the korban for the first tumah. But when it comes to the fellow who's unable to walk on the first day of Yom Tov, there was no obligation b'chlal. He couldn't walk. There was never an obligation to bring the korban. So, right, so Elo Amar Rav Papa, I'm going to read that again. Rather says Rav Papa, Kasav Rabbi Yochanan, Laila Eino Mechusar Zman, that at night is not lacking the proper time to offer the korban, i.e., nighttime is already the time to offer the korban that a Nazir offers when he becomes Tameh. Just that he's unable to actually offer it till the next day, but at the time that he became Tameh the second time, the night between day 7 and day 8, there was already an obligation to offer a korban, and that's why he offers that korban when he becomes Tahor again. But then, in fact, the Gemara, wait, does Rabbi Yochanan really say that the nighttime is already the time to offer the korban? Rabbi Yochanan says, Ra'achaz balayla v'shtayim bayom. Ho. Friends, what's this talking about? It's talking about Azov. Givaldig. Azov. A fellow he sees this stuff. It's not sperm, it's something else. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I don't necessarily want to know what it is. Ziva. What am I tell you? So he sees Ziva. So if he sees it once, then it's not actually a big deal. It's just basically has the same status of a Balkari. But if he sees it a second time, within 3 days, so then he becomes a Zav, which means he becomes an Avatuma, and he has to go 7 days without seeing any Ziva in order to become Tahor again. And if he sees, the fellow's still yelling. I tell you, there's a lot of stamina. So if he sees Ziva a third time within 3 days, well then he becomes a Zav Gadol. In addition to being an Avatuma and having to wait 7 days without seeing any Ziva in order to become Tahor again, he also then has to bring a korban at the end of those 7 days. So now says the Gemara, doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say Ra'achas Balayla, that if a fellow sees Ziva once at night, so meaning he had already seen Ziva 3 times, he was a Zav Gadol, and then he waited 7 days, and for 7 days he did not see any more Ziva, and great, Givaldik, he's able to move on with his life. Day 7 he goes to the mikveh, and now it's the following night, and now the next day he's going to have to offer his korban. And of course, during the night between day 7 and day 8, when he's going to offer his korban, he sees Ziva again. Vishtayim bayom, and then he sees Ziva twice more during the day. Maybe, so he has to bring 2 korbanos, right? So meaning, shucks, the guy was a Zav Gadol, he had seen Ziva 3 times within the course of 3 days. He became a Zav Gadol. He then for 7 days did not see any more Ziva. Oh, okay. And then over the course of 7 days, he did not see any Ziva. So he thought that he now became Tahor. And then the next day, on day 8, he was going to have to bring a korban. And then what happened was, he basically became a Zav again. Because he saw Ziva the night between day 7 and day 8, and then he saw Ziva 2 more times on day 8, i.e. when he had an obligation to already bring a korban, right? So meaning the night between day 7 and day 8, when he saw Ziva, it didn't, that seeing Ziva just once is like a Balkari. But then when he saw it again, 2 more times on day 8, so then the one that he saw the night before joins together with those other 2, and then basically on day 8, when he already had an obligation to offer his korban, he became a Zav Gadol a second time, so now he has to wait another week. After the week is over, he's going to bring 2 korbanos, one for that he had to bring on day 8, that he was unable to bring, and then another one he brings, the next week when he becomes Tahor again. But shtayim balayla v'achas bayom, however, says Rabbi Yochanan, if he saw Ziva twice at night, i.e. he already became a Zav again at night, i.e. he already became Tameh again at night before he was able to offer a korban, because the korban is only offered the next day. V'achaz bayom, and then he sees Ziva once more the next day, so now that makes him a Zav Gadol, and now he's got to wait another week. So Eno Mevi. So in that case, says Rabbi Yochanan, when he becomes Tahor again from the second Ziva, he only has to bring 1 korban. He doesn't have to bring a korban for the first Ziva, because it was all one long Ziva, because he became a Zav a second time before, right, in the night between day 7 and day 8, when he didn't yet have the obligation to bring his korban, because the bringing of the korban is only the next day. So what do we see? We see that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that apparently the night between day 7 and day 8, he does not yet have the obligation to offer his korban, because if he did have the obligation already to offer his korban, then I would say that even if he sees Ziva twice in that night between day 7 and day 8, which makes him a Zav again, well, it doesn't matter. The night between day 7 and day 8 was already, if we're going to say like that, then that would mean that that night is already, he's already obligated to bring his korban. He just technically can't bring it till the next day. But if we want to say that according to Rabbi Yochanan, the night between day 7 and day 8, he's already obligated to bring the korban, well then, if he sees Ziva twice that night, he should he should still have to bring a korban for the first ziva because he was already obligated. Right, so Shtayim Balayla V'Achad B'Yom Eino Mevi. Rabbi Yochanan seems to be saying though that if he sees ziva twice that night, then he does not have to bring a korban for the first ziva, right, for the first week. He just brings one korban at the end. But if it enters your mind, as I explained a minute ago, to say that according to Rabbi Yochanan, well, I think this guy's getting closer to my house. The yelling is getting louder. It's unbelievable. I could just stand out there yelling for so long, doing it for the whole afternoon. I don't know. Anyways, so if we're going to say, like we said earlier, that already, like I said a minute ago, that already the nighttime, according to Rabbi Yochanan, is already time for him to offer his korban. He just, technically speaking, can't offer it till the next day. Well then, afilu shtayim balayla, even if he would see ziva twice during that night, v'achas bayom, and one the following day, maybe he should still have to bring 2 korbanos when he becomes Torah again, once for the first ziva and once for the second ziva. So for the Gemara, ki ka'am Rabbi Yochanan, the divrei omer laila mechusar zman. So the Gemara says, well, no. Rabbi Yochanan, in fact, does hold, like we said, that the nighttime he's already obligated to offer the korban. Just that he technically can't offer it till tomorrow, but he already has the obligation. Right? So, that's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, that the nighttime there is already the obligation to offer the korban. When Rabbi Yochanan says that if he sees ziva twice during the night between day 7 and day 8, so then he doesn't, right, then he's potter from bringing a korban for the first ziva, i.e. it's all just one long ziva, and he brings one korban at the end for all of it. So that's according to the opinion who says that nighttime he's not yet obligated to offer the korban. That according to the opinion that at night he's not yet obligated to offer the korban. So according to that opinion, if he would see ziva twice that night, so then he would be potter from offering the korban. Right, i.e. at the end of the Z, all of the Z, when he becomes Torah again at the end, so he would bring one korban for all of it. But the divrei omer pshita. So the Gemara says, yeah, but isn't that obvious? Why does Rabbi Yochanan need to say that? Isn't it obvious that according to the opinion that according to the opinion that holds that nighttime is not yet the time for the korban, so if he becomes a zav a second time during the night, he would only have to bring one korban for all of the time, for the 2 weeks? So shtayim bayom v'achas balayla itzrichalei eina chinami. But the bigger chiddush is what Rabbi Yochanan says, that if he sees ziva twice during the day and once at night, so then he says that, right, that it would be potter from offering. He would be chayav. 1 second, I think there's some discussions happening outside. I'm a little bit curious if it's about our friend the yeller. 1 second. Sorry. So the bigger chiddush that Rabbi Yochanan is saying is really about when he sees it twice during the day, right? Because we said that Rabbi Yochanan said that if he sees this zav fellow sees ziva twice on day 8, so then he has to bring 2 korbanos at the end, right? One for the first ziva and one for the second ziva. I may have thought to say ka'askafta du of shisha brei of idi. I may have thought to say like the question that Rav Shisha brei of idi asks against Rav Yosef in Masechta Kreisus Kamashman K'd Rav Yosef. So Rav Yochanan is teaching us that the halachas of Rav Yosef. What does this mean? That Rav Yosef says, this is the Gemara in Kreisus, that Rav Yosef says that when he sees ziva twice on day 8 and once on the night between day 7 and day 8, so the one ziva that he saw during the night ends up going along with the 2 that he sees on day 8, and therefore it's as if he saw everything on day 8 when he already had an obligation to offer the korban on day 8. So therefore he has to bring 2 korbanos at the end when he becomes Torah, at the end, once for the first ziva, once for the second ziva. And it's not like Rav Shisha brei Rav Idi who said that no, actually it would all go based, it would be as if he saw everything on the, right, if he saw it once during the night and twice during the next day, it would go based on the one that he saw during the night. I.e., and it would be as though he saw the ziva at night, and therefore, according to the opinion that nighttime is not yet time to offer the korbanos, if he saw all of them during the night between day 7 and day 8, so then he would be potter from bringing a korban for the first ziva, since the obligation for the korban didn't yet exist. And therefore, that is the chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan, that he's saying, according to the opinion that the night between day 7 and day 8 is not yet the time to offer his korbanos. So if he becomes a zav again that night, so you only have to bring one korban at the end for the whole time. And the chiddush is that even if he sees ziva once during that night and then twice the next day, what Rabbi Yochanan is saying is that we hold like Rav Yosef, that the one ziva that he saw at night gets tacked along with the two that he saw the next day, that according to the opinion that the nighttime is not yet the time for the korban, however the next day is the time that is the time for the korban. So the one, says Rabbi Yochanan, according to that opinion, the one ziva that he saw during the night between day 7 and day 8 gets tacked together with the two that he saw the next day on day 8. So, and therefore he has to bring 2 korbanos. Friends, that was the hard part. What do you guys think about that? So what do we see? So we see that Rabbi Yochanan's opinion is that when it comes to nighttime, it's already considered the time to offer the korban, and that is why when it comes to the Nazir, between day 7 and day 8, if he becomes tummy again, says Rabbi Yochanan, he would have to bring a korban for both times that he became tummy, because the nighttime is already the time he already has an obligation to offer his korban asham, which is not the case when it comes to a fellow who's unable to walk on the first day of the festival, because in that case simply he had no obligation, and therefore there's no need for tashlumin. Friends, that was the hard part of the daf. Didn't disappoint. Over a regel v'lochag, said the Mishnah that if the festival passes and he did not offer the korban Hagiga, eno chai b'achrayuso, well, he missed his chance, he doesn't have to make that up. Valza nemar, and about this situation it says, muvas luyuchol liskon, something that's crooked is unable to be fixed, v'chesem luyuchol limanos, something that is lacking is unable to be counted. Omele bar hei lehillel, bar hei said to Hillel, hai limanos limalos mi ba'ilei. Bar Hei asks Hillel, he says, what does it mean chesun liyuchol lihimanu? Something that's lacking is unable to be counted. I would think it should be something that's lacking is unable to be complete. What does it mean that it's unable to be counted? So Hillel says to him, Zeshiminu chaver v'ledvar mitzvah vulo nimna imayin. This is talking about a situation where a person's friend says, hey, why don't you come along with us? We're going to go do a mitzvah. And he doesn't come along. So in that case, that's what it means. Chesun liyuchol lihimanos, that he missed out on an opportunity to be counted with his friends to do this mitzvah. Tanin Amiyachabi, also in a brayso like this, muvas liyuchol liskon, something that's crooked is unable to be fixed. It says shabito kriyas shema shel shacharis or kriyas shema shel arvis. That's somebody who neglected to say kriyas shema in the morning or at night, or shabito tefillah shel shacharis or tefillah shel arvis, or that he neglected to daven shacharis in the morning or Mariv at night. So what does it mean? Something that is lacking, is unable to be counted. That's talking about somebody that his friends all got together to do a mitzvah and he did not count himself among them. Friends, now comes the famous Gemara from the Tanya. So Bar Hei says to Hillel, what does the pasuk mean in Malachi? V'shavtem ru'isem ben tzadik larosha. They will come back and you will see the difference between a righteous fellow and a nudnik, ben oved elokim lasher lo avado, between somebody who serves God and somebody who did not serve God. Frekt Bar Hei asks, Hanu tzadik, hanu oved elokim, hanu rosha, hanu asher lo avado. What's the deal with the duplicity in the pasuk? Isn't a tzaddik the same thing as an Oved Elokim? Isn't a righteous fellow the same thing as somebody who worships God? Isn't a Rasha, isn't a Nudnik the same thing as Asher Lo Avado, as somebody who has not served God? So Amalei, friends, you ready? Hillel responds, Avado v'lo avado, tavayu tzadike gmurei ninu. That both when it comes to the fellow who is serving God and the fellow who is not serving God, they're both talking about tzaddikim. Neither one is a Nudnik. Ve'enu domeh shonepirko meya paimim, the shonepirko meya ve'echad. And it's a completely different league. It's apples and oranges. It's incomparable. somebody who reviews his learning 100 times versus somebody who reviews his learning 101 times. And Barhei says what? Just because of that one time, we refer to the person who went over his learning 100 times. He didn't serve God because he didn't do it one more time. And Hillel says, yup, exactly. Come and learn from the market of the donkeys. Asara parse bezuza, chad asar parse betrei. That the way that the fee works is that if you want to rent a donkey for 10 parsas, 1 zuz. But after 10 parsas, if you even want one more parsa, right? A parsa is like a mile or whatever it is. You want one more parsa, it's 2 zuz. Kilu, 10 parsas for 1 zuz. If you want anything more than that, then it's a special order. And even one more parsa is now doubles the price. That kilu, the system is set up for a certain thing. The system is set up that it's 1 zuz for 10 parsas. If you want to customize the system, well then the price doubles. Just like that. And therefore, says Hillel, that, a person reviews his learning 100 times, givaldik. But if he pushes himself, that, just over the hill, and he does it one more time, that makes all the difference. That's the difference between Ovid Elokim Lashelo Avado. That's the difference between somebody who serves God and somebody who doesn't serve God. That one extra time that he pushes himself makes all the difference. Wow. Eliyahu says to Barhei, some say he says to Rabbi Elazar, what does the pasuk mean? He needs to avticha v'lo b'chesef. I have forged you, but not with silver. B'chayticha b'chor oni. I have chosen you in a what's that core thing? I don't know, a molten maker thingy, a really hot thing that you make stuff in, of poorness, poverty. That the Eibishter was going over all the different possibilities of good things to give, good attributes to give to the Yidden, and he found that the best thing is poverty. Shmuel says, Shmuel, V'temer of Yosef, some takasei of Yosef, this is what people say, that poverty is good for a Yid, ki barza sumko l'susayich chivara, like a red strap on a white horse. If you have a white horse, a red strap really stands out. So poverty for a Yid, I guess, makes him really stand out. Reb Shimon ben Manasseh Omer says, Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, Ezu muvas liyuchal liskon. What does it mean? Something that is crooked is unable to be fixed. That's a fellow who sleeps with somebody he's not allowed to sleep with, and then they have a child, and that child is a mamzer. Well, there isn't really much you could do about it. The child is now, facts on the ground, is now alive and a person. Hold it in, hold it no. Now, affect the Gemara, 1 second. Reuven sleeps with Rachel. He's not allowed to sleep with Rachel. So now, right, so Reb Shimon ben Manasseh had said if they had a child, so then, that's unable to be fixed because now, now he exists in the world. What, that implying that only if there's a child born, that would be something that's crooked is unable to be fixed? Ve'atanya, we learned about Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, Omer says Reb Shimon ben Manasseh, Gonev Adam efshar sheyachzir genevo v'yisakin. Look, if Reuven steals from Shimon, so he can always just return it to Shimon, and that's that. Goes al Adam efshar sheyachzir gzelo v'yisakin. Again, if difference in Geneva and Gzela, Geneva is at night, Gzela is during the day, whatever it is, but if you do Gzela, so again, Reuben can just give it back to Shimon, and that's that, it's over. Aval Abal Eshizish, also Lebaila, but if Reuven sleeps with Rachel, and Rachel's married to somebody else, and now she's no longer allowed to be with her husband ever again, meaning if it was consensual, Nitrad min ha'olam, well, it's basically permanent damage. So we see that even if there isn't a baby that's born, there could still be permanent damage, and that Rachel is no longer allowed to be with her husband. Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Omer says, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, in Om Bakru Gomel, Bakru Chozir. We don't say, hey, keep an eye on this, keep a watch on this camel, keep a watch on this pig to make sure that they don't develop a mum. Bakru Tole. Obviously, we're not going to say about a camel and a pig to make sure it doesn't get a mum. A camel and a pig are not things that you're allowed to eat. They're not things that you're allowed to offer in the first place. Rather, we say a sheep, something that already in the first place you're able to offer, is something that we want to check and watch to make sure it doesn't get a mum. And the metaphor would be for a Torah scholar, sheperish min Torah, who leaves the way of the Torah, i.e., somebody who started off good and then went the wrong way. Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, Omer says Rabbi Yehuda ben Lakish, Kol Talmud Chacham sheperish min Torah, any Torah scholar who leaves the Torah, all of Akasav Omer, the pasuk says about him, Kitzipu nodedes min kino, kenish noded mimukomo, like a bird that flies away from its nest, so too is a person who leaves his place. Omer, and the pasuk says, Mamatzu avosechem bi'avel, what did your fathers find in me that was no good? That they distanced themselves from me. So going back to our original question, how come Reb Shimon ben Menashe says in our Mishnah that Muvas Lo Yuchal Liskon is specifically when a baby is born, but even if a baby isn't born, the fact that this woman is unable to be with her husband ever again, that's already permanent damage. So, and for the Gemara, Lo Kasha, it's no problem. So it depends. If she's an Eishasis, if she's the kind of Arayos that, you can't sleep with her because she's married, so there, even if a baby is not born, she won't be allowed to be with her husband anymore, and it's permanent damage. But let's say somebody sleeps with his sister, right? That's an example of a rayos that's not allowed. But that if she's not married, so then there's no permanent damage done there. So in that case, the permanent damage would be if a baby is born. If you want, I will say both of them are talking about a married woman. V'lokasha, it's no question. Kan ba'onis kan brotzon. It depends if it was consensual or not. If it was consensual, so then it's permanent damage. She's not allowed to be with her husband anymore. But if it was not consensual, if she was he slept with her against her will, so then she would be allowed to be with the husband, with her husband still, and it would only be a problem if a baby is born. If you want, I will say maybe both of them could have been against her will, but still velokasha kam be'eshes kohen kam be'eshes Yisrael. If she's married to a Yisrael, a non-kohen, so then they could remain married. But even if it was against her will, if she's married to a kohen, they would not be allowed to be married anymore, and that would be the permanent damage even without a baby. Vilayotze vilaba in Shalom, says the pasuk in Zechariah that a person who comes and a person who goes, there's no peace. Omer Rav, says Rav, Kevin Sheyotze Adam mi dvar halacha ledvar mikra shuven no shalom. Says Rav that a person who leaves halacha and then studies only chumash, he's not going to find peace. I.e., in halacha, so then there's sort of resolution. Or you understand halachas, you understand how to live your life, what to do. But from the chumash, straight from the chumash, you can't learn halacha, so you're not going to kind of have peace. You're not going to kind of be able to have the guide of what to be doing. Shmuel says that somebody who leaves Gemara and learns Mishnayos, that Mishnayos are gevaldig, but you can't paskin halacha from Mishnayos, right? That's why there's Gemara, to ask questions on the Mishnayos. How could you have one Mishnah here say this and another Mishnah there say that? Or if you have a Mishnah here but a Brisa there, or this opinion is, this opinion holds this way, this opinion holds that way, or who's the Tana of this Mishnah, or maybe the Mishnah is lacking certain words, right? You need the Gemara in order to explain the Mishnah properly. If you go from learning Gemara to learning just Mishnayos, so then you're kind of missing out on some of the more developed discussions, and you just have sort of more sporadic, disconnected Mishnayos. Rabbi Yochanan says even somebody who goes from learning Talmud Yerushalmi to learning Talmud Bavli, which I think we're saying is sort of a little bit more difficult to work through. So in that case also, that would be an example of Shalom, that a fellow who comes and goes doesn't have any peace. I.e., if he goes from the way of halacha to Chumash, by the way, from Gemara to Mishnah, or even from Talmud Yerushalmi to Talmud Bavli. Friends, that was the Tes of Masechta Hagiga. A lot of very interesting stuff, right? The daf began talking about that you should really offer the korban on the first day of the festival. If you don't, so you can make it up the rest of the days of the festival. On Sukkot, you can even make it up on Shmini Atzeres, but after that, you missed your chance. We saw the machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Oshaya. Rabbi Yochanan says that the way to understand tashlumin is that it's making up for the first day. Oh, more yelling. Oh, maybe that's a dog. So says Rabbi Yochanan, the way tashlumin works is that if you missed the first day, so you can make it up on the subsequent day. So all the other days are making up for the first day. Whereas Rabbi Oshaya says that no, as long as there's an obligation, then there's an obligation to bring a korban. Meaning, let's say, right, and we said, what's an nafkamina? Well, let's say you have a fellow who is unable to walk on the first day, but then he's able to walk on the second day. So according to Rabbi Oshaya, okay, so the second day has an obligation. If he doesn't bring it the second day, so make it up on the third day, etc. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, no, it's all based on the first day, and if on the first day he was unable to walk, so he has no obligation to offer the korban for the rest of the festival. We didn't ask kashas by Rabbi Yochanan, right? How could it be that he's saying that since there was no obligation, so he doesn't have to make it up, but by a nazir who becomes tamei for a second time the night between day 7 and day 8, when he didn't have an obligation yet to offer his korban, he yet still has to bring his korban ultimately when he becomes Torah again. So we wanted to say, initially, Rabbi Yirmi wanted to say, well, Tumah is different because, by Tumah we have a precedent with the korban Pesach, right, with the Pesach Sheni, that you make up for the fact that you were tamei. But then Papa says, okay, but that's only according to the opinion who says that Pesach Sheni actually is making up for the first Korban Pesach, but not everybody agrees. Those who say that Pesach Sheni is its own holiday, its own festival, in its own right, in which case it's not a makeup. So then we ended up saying, look, Rabbi Yochanan holds that, right, so Papa says that Rabbi Yochanan holds that the nighttime is already, you're obligated to offer the korban, just that technically speaking you can't offer it till the next day. But that's why the nazir, if he becomes tamei at night between day 7 and day 8, so he still has to make it up when he becomes tahor again, because the obligation was already there to bring the korban, which is not the case when it comes to the first day of the festival. He wasn't yet obligated to offer the korban since he was unable to walk. And then we discussed the concept of me'uvas lo yuchol liskon, that we saw some interesting Gemaras. For example, that the difference between reviewing what you learned 100 times versus 101 times, that going, pushing yourself a little further and going out of the ordinary can, sort of double the achievement. We then analyze Rav Shimon ben Manasseh's opinion, which is that when it comes to muvas lo yuchol liskon, something that's crooked that cannot be fixed. So he said that that's somebody who sleeps with somebody who's not allowed to, and they have a baby who's a mamzer. So now there's an actual baby, can't be fixed. But we said, wait, but Rav Shimon ben Manasseh also says that somebody who sleeps with an eishes ish, and now she can no longer be with her husband anymore. We gave 3 nafkaminas. Right, one is that, well, it depends if it was onus or it depends if, right, it was his sister or if it was a married woman. If it was a married woman, so then even without the baby, so then there's permanent damage. But if it's, let's say, his sister who's not married, so then, only if the baby was born. Or you could say that they're both talking about eish ish, but it depends if it was consensual or not. Or alternatively, you can even say it wasn't consensual, but she's married to a Kohen, so then there's permanent damage that way. Friends, that was the Tes of Masechta Hagiga. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.